those we have worked with, and then if you'd like to contact us, we would let you know how to. So CoreTech is a young, vibrant, and dynamic organization that has been in existence for the past 12 years. And we have a team of dedicated staff who have several years of experience in developing IT solutions across various sectors, such as telecommunication, pharmaceutical, banking, and finance. Our team is dedicated and committed to developing innovative ideas and solutions at very affordable costs to everyone. So the mission, why does CoreTech exist in the first place? Our mission is to exceed our clients' expectations by providing cutting-edge technology, high-quality training, products and services, timely and superior technical support, and top-notch customer service. And the vision is to be dedicated, sustainable, competitive, customer-oriented, profitable, and a reliable organization that delivers exceptional value to our clients. Okay, so when it comes to solutions and services, there are a wide range of areas that we do. So for instance, in adoption of agile methodology, or for an organization that wants to transition from a typically traditional or predictive environment into an agile environment, you can approach us and we will guide you on that transformation journey. Again, there are a number of certification programs that we offer with PMI. So if you want to write your PMP or your PBA or your ACP exams, and again, RNP, CoreTech Solutions is the go-to person to give you this training. Again, we have a number of solutions we deliver when it comes to IT. So we are into IT and telecom consulting as well. As well, we have mentoring and coaching sessions, and again, web application development. Even though we are shying away from web development, if you have any job of that sort, you can come to CoreTech and we will deliver. So who are those we have worked with over the years? PMI Ghana chapter has been a very reliable business partner. We offer a lot of services with them. Again, we work with Ghana Communication Technology University. And again, we work with Catholic University College of Ghana. We also have partners outside Ghana, that's across Africa. So we've worked with businesses in Rwanda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Togo, and Liberia. And I'm pleased to inform you that we have a lot of satisfied customers that can attest to the value they get when they engage us. So some of these corporate partners or clients of ours include Danax, Artin Starwin, and then we have Fidelity Bank Ghana, EFT Corporation, and STL Ghana Limited. These are clients that we have worked with over the years. So for CoreTech Agile Limited, if you wish to connect with us, make any form of inquiries or requests concerning the solutions we provide, kindly email us at connect@coretechagile.com. Our phone number is 026261089. And you can also visit our website to get more information. We will be glad and more than happy to work with you. Now, zooming into the main activity of the day, I am honored and privileged to introduce to us our facilitator in the person of Mr. Emmanuel Amankwano. So Emmanuel is a passionate business analyst, project manager, scrum master, risk manager, author, agile practitioner, and trainer with an entrepreneurial mindset. His experience in solution development and managing projects spans over 15 years. working on projects across many sectors of the economy, including education, IT, telecoms, banking, transportation, and pharmaceutical. He has expertise in customer and vendor management and training of cross-functional teams. Emmanuel has internationally recognized certification in project management, risk management, business analysis, general agile, and disciplined agile from the Project Management Institute. He holds a BSc in computer engineering and a Master of Science Management from the University of Management and Technology in USA. So ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to this session free webinar on what Agile is all about. And I'll leave it to Emmanuel to take us through the session. Hi, Emmanuel, you are welcome.
Thank you, Lillian. And please, can I be heard?
Loud and clear on my side. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And welcome to all the participants. Maybe I just want to show my face for those who don't know me. Okay, so I think I can be seen. Yeah, so that's my good self. Happy to be here to have this webinar. Let me share my screen on the presentation. Okay, so there we go. This is the agenda for today's session. The introduction has already been done by Lillian. Thank you very much, Lillian, for the introduction. We'll be looking at some facts about Agile. Then we will zoom into the foundation, which is the Agile Manifesto. Then we'll consider a few popular frameworks, or we'll say Agile methodologies that exist today. We'll look at how to become Agile if we, as individuals, as organizations, want to transition into Agile. And then the why. Why do we want to adopt agility or Agile? Then what are the risks and concerns that we need to be aware of? We need to know them so that we can make wise decisions regarding the transitioning. Well, I would not want to bore you with so much information, so we'll be leaving more room for questions. So your questions are warmly welcome. We would zoom into the first of the items on our agenda. Now, what is Agile? We're going to look at some facts about Agile. Of course, there are a number of misconceptions about what Agile is, but we need to know the facts. One important fact is this, that Agile is not a methodology. Agile is not a framework. However, Agile is a philosophy. It's actually a mindset. Now, this mindset comes with some values and principles. Now, when you look at values, values are things that an individual or an entity or an organization believes in. Values. But when we talk about principles, principles are fundamental truths. Truths that can be undeniable. That's what we look at as principles. So Agile is actually a philosophy that has values and principles. And I want to look at these values and principles as we progress. So if an organization, if an individual, if a family wants to become agile, then there should be a change in the way of thinking. The mindset should be adaptive. It should be based on the values and the principles that underpin what we know today as agile. Now, the agile we know today originated from the software development world. Back in the mid-1990s, a group of software developers, in fact, many of them started with a lightweight development of solutions to their clients because they realized that the traditional waterfall approach wasn't helping to meet the demands of the market. The demands were very rapid, dynamic, and response needed to be very quick. So software developers were looking at faster ways of developing solutions that meet clients' needs for them to be competitive on the markets. So that is the origin of what we know today as Agile. So people think that when we talk about Agile, it is all about software development. That is not true. Of course, we understand that it originated from that industry, but today, as we speak, Agile has exploded into other industries. You'll find, even in construction, people adopting some Agile practices to be able to do their jobs. You go into the marketing field, they are doing the same thing. In the medical field, pharmaceutical field, Agile has been adapted and is working very well for many of the industries that have embraced this mindset change. Another fact about Agile is that it is iterative. Now, when we talk about it being iterative, what does that mean? So the things that sequentially will be done in typical waterfall approach, this Agile recommends a repetition of these steps many times. So if it is planning, planning is not done once. You do planning severally in the course of the project. If it is designing and developing, you do these things severally in the course of the project. Unlike the waterfall approach where you dedicate a session, a time period for planning, and hardly do you go back. You dedicate a time for deployment or development, and hardly do you go back. Then you dedicate a time for testing. And once the testing is done, that is it. We are going into deployment and we launch the product. Agile is not like that. These steps are repeated because we break the product into bits or chunks and use short cycles to develop these chunks of products. We mentioned that it's also incremental. Now, every iteration is expected to add on to the functionality of the product. It could be fixing existing issues, or it could be adding on new functionality. So that is the incremental aspect of the Agile way of working. You add on by improving the solution, adding more functionality, or fixing known issues that have come up. Then we have another key aspect. It is designed to drive collaboration. The involvement of stakeholders is very key in Agile. transparency, making sure that everybody knows what is happening at every stage in the course of the project. In the course of the development, in the course of the delivery, we want to let everybody know. So there are a number of things that will be done, dashboards and information radiators to let people know what is happening. Where are we in the course of the project? It becomes very easy for everybody to know. Visibility is very important. Transparency, making sure that nobody is blinded in the course of the project. Then we talk about quality within the solution development. Understanding the requirements, refining the requirements, having lots of communication really brings the understanding very clearly for everyone involved to understand what we actually are developing. What is the solution? What are we implementing? Another fact about Agile is this: it is not always the right answer for every organization. And not every organization can go Agile. And that is a fact that we need to understand. There are bureaucratic environments which will not make it possible for Agile to thrive. So we shouldn't think that Agile can be applied everywhere. It is not true. Therefore, Agile is not a silver bullet. It doesn't solve all problems. Agile is not a silver bullet. It doesn't solve all problems. And we shouldn't think that it is the cheapest option. It can be expensive if not done right. So these are facts about Agile that anyone who wants to learn about Agile needs to know. We need to understand these facts. Now, if you are having any questions, please feel free. You can put them on the chat. You can also write them down so that when it comes to Q&A, you can bring them up. Let's have an overview of how Agile works. Now, I earlier mentioned that Agile started from the software industry. So this is an example of how, let's say, software development projects can be used, can be seen from the Agile perspective. Now you can see that it is round, right? The iterativeness comes in what you see in here. So at the start of the project, we define the requirements. We look at what are we doing? What are we to deliver? What is expected? What does the client want? We discuss that, and then that goes into the execution where you have the development of what has been understood. So functionality is developed, it's reviewed, the customer has a review, a demo is done for the customer to see what has been developed. If it suits the requirements of the customer, obviously, that makes it easy for us to proceed to the next iteration where we do additional functionality, we continue. This step or this number of steps continue until the customer is satisfied that all I want or all I ask for is what I see in the product. Then we can decide to release into the market. So the customer is involved in this process as much as possible. And the cycles for Agile iterations are very short. Sometimes it could just be 1 week. And just think about it, developing solution within, or a part of a solution within a week, or a matter of a week and some few days. Maximum 4 weeks, that is a month. Because the longer your iteration, the longer the feedback loop becomes. And we want to make sure that the feedback loop is shorter in order to minimize negative risks on the projects. So this involvement of the clients could be weekly, could be bi-weekly, it could be depending on the nature of the system you are building. If the requirements keep changing a lot, then it means the iteration length should be very short to accommodate rapid changes. So in a nutshell, that is how the agile approach to project management is like. So you start, you execute. Of course, starting has a number of things you need to do, approvals here and there. Then you get your requirements. You start iterating by developing functionality by functionality. Every functionality that is developed is reviewed, tested, and then feedback is given to either approve it for the next functionality to be started, or work is done on what has been developed to make it meet the requirements of the customer. So that is the brief when it comes to the agile approach to project management. Now let's look at the values and principles I did mention earlier. We mentioned that agile is a philosophy based on values, some values and principles. Now, when you go to agilemanifesto.org, agilemanifesto.org, there are 17 individuals who came up to propose a new way of doing things, came up with this Agile Manifesto. Of course, this manifesto has overgrown its application because it was heavily based on software development. But as we proceed, you realize that, of course, even though it was based on software development, the values still are valid and can be applied in other industries as well. So the first of the 4 values, which you can see on the left, is people and interactions over processes and tools. So these agile experts recognize that people and interactions that should exist in amongst them was to be valued over processes and tools. They are not saying that processes and tools are bad and that we don't need them, but then there is more value in having interactions, discussing with their clients, discussing with stakeholders, collaborating, and understanding the requirements far more than using processes and tools. Of course, if I want to communicate with a stakeholder, I can just take a phone and call the person. I can send an email, and it will not be bad. But what about really having a face-to-face interaction, discussing matters with a stakeholder? That seems to be far better than just using tools to communicate. Again, it doesn't mean that processes and tools are bad. But then the interactions are. Now the second is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Well, let me just go down there. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Let me take the one under working software over comprehensive documentation. I keep making this analogy with my students. If I describe a nice food that you like, right, your best meal, I describe it in 10 pages of documents for you, as compared to giving you something to bite and enjoy. Which one would you prefer? Obviously, you would want something to taste and enjoy than just to read and imagine what you are reading, right? So Agile focuses on the solution. So working software over comprehensive documentation. The working software here, today we would change that to working solution over comprehensive documentation. Again, these Agile proponents are not saying that documentation is bad. Comprehensive documentation is what they are not in favor of. Sufficient documentation is important. Every project produces certain documentation. So what is most valuable about the project that needs to be documented should be documented. But focus should not be on getting documentation right up front. Think about it. Things can change. So what happens when things change? Sometimes documents become irrelevant because the information in the document is outdated compared to the actual work that has been done on the ground. So Agile focuses more on the solution than just spending so much time on getting documentation right. Again, it doesn't mean that documentation is not necessary. What we are looking at here is sufficient documentation that will help us achieve the objectives of the project. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. When you enter into a contract with a third party, there are terms and conditions that must be met. And many times these terms and conditions make it very difficult to make changes. Before a change will have to be made, it must go through a certain process before the change is done. Now, Agile focuses more on collaborating with the customer. So if the collaboration is there, I don't need to be afraid to go to the customer and say that, look, we need to make a change to this. The customer will not be afraid to come and then ask for a change. But if it is solely on contract negotiation, then that process has to be kicked off to start and then get the change done, which is sometimes very cumbersome, can be time-consuming and all that. So Agile focuses or emphasizes more on collaboration. Let's collaborate, let's understand each other. If you want a change, yes, I can do the change for you, but it will cost this X amount. Shall we discuss that and then we can be able to make progress than to go through a formal change control procedure? So again, contract negotiation is not bad, but there's something that should be focused on more than the contract negotiation, which is the customer collaboration. Now, the last of the 4 values is that responding to change over following a plan. Now, that is where agility comes in, adaptability, responding to change over following a plan. Plans can become outdated, like I mentioned earlier, and plans may not reflect current situation. Therefore, Agile recommends being able to respond to the change than following a plan. And typical example, which almost every industry has suffered, is COVID-19. We know what happened. All of a sudden, things have to change. If an organization was not ready for remote work, to allow its workers to work remotely from home, we know what would have happened. And that would mean that they are going to close shop. Of course, there are some organizations that would require persons to be in the premise at all times, like the hospitals and the rest. But many others needed to adapt to the change. They had to respond to the change to become relevant. Otherwise, they go out of business. So Agile recommends understanding what is happening in the market and responding to that change, or even creating the change yourself. And there are so many organizations today that are actually disrupting the market by creating change in the market. They are agile. They are looking at the trend, and then they bring solutions that change the dynamics of the market. So if you are not able to create change, at least respond to the change than to follow a laid down plan. And some of the alcohol manufacturing companies in Ghana here, I know, did very well in responding to the change when COVID hits by changing their base, turning their base from producing alcohol into producing sanitizers, hand sanitizers because that was a market. There was a market for sanitizers, and they responded to that change and produced what would be relevant for the people in the market. So that's what we looked at as the 4 values of Agile. 1, people and interactions over processes and tools. 2, working software over comprehensive documentation. 3, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And finally, responding to change over following a plan. Sometime after this was developed by the proponents of Agile, they came up with supporting principles. And these principles are very key in implementing Agile. Now, the first and foremost principle is that you want to satisfy the customer. Now, satisfying the customer means understanding what the customer needs and giving the customer what is expected. That is the first and foremost principle. So in a way, we can say the customer is king, right? We hear that all the time. The customer is king. Of course, whatever the customer is asking for should be ethical, should be legit, should be legitimate, right? So prioritize customer satisfaction is very important. 2, welcome changing requests. I mean, whilst it is focused on adaptability, even getting to the tail end of the project, if there's a need for a change to be made to respond to the market dynamics, that change needs to be made. That is what that principle indicates. So you welcome change. Don't be shy of making a request for change, and don't be shy to respond to making the change for the benefit of the customer. Okay. Then 3, deliver working software frequently. So we talk about the iteration. So short cycles of development. You make sure you are developing solutions. No more than 4 weeks. Solutions should be developed for the customer to review, to even go to market with the base. Like we know WhatsApp started with just a few features, tests and the rest. Now today, as we speak, we know the number of features WhatsApp has. Many. If they had waited to get all those features before they launched, I don't think they would have made the money that they have made by now. So make sure you deliver working software frequently. And you see, the more frequently you deliver, the quicker you get feedback, the faster you are able to improve the solution, the better the quality of the product. So that is very key. Then 4, business people and then developers, technical people should work daily together. Business people have a way they think, which is biased towards the customer. Technical people think about developing a solution, technical details, and may not necessarily have an eye for the customer. But if the 2 work together, they are bringing both worlds together, the world of the customer and the world of the techies together. So Agile recommends as a principle that business people and technical people work together daily. It could be working virtually, working in the same office, but working together on a daily basis is very key. 5, build projects around motivated individuals. What motivates Mr. B does not motivate Mr. A. So you should know what motivates people. Of course, that's quite challenging, but Agile recommends that projects should be built around people who are motivated. And the motivation usually should be intrinsic, not extrinsic. Extrinsic motivation can sometimes fail. So people who are actually intrinsically motivated can support Agile to work better in organizations. Working software is a primary measure of progress. We don't want to use documentation. The documentation is telling us we are 10% done. What is 10%? Show progress. The progress should be shown than it being told. So software working, software that has been developed, that has been tested, that is working, is what we use as a primary measure of progress. So if you have developed 10 features, yes, that shows that indeed we are making progress. So working solution is what we use to measure progress. Now, promote sustainable development. You want people to be working at a sustainable pace. What happens when an engineer is overworked? Starts making mistakes. And making mistakes will lead to rework, and rework possibly increasing the costs, causing fatigue, as well as demoralizing the people in the team. But if there's a sustainable pace, disciplined, trustworthy people can work within a particular period constantly and still deliver the solution. So if it is 8 hours per week, that should be it. No overtime. The overtime should be only when it is extremely necessary. So sustainable pace for development is very key in Agile. We don't want engineers, technical people to be overworked and start making unnecessary mistakes. Then continuous attention to technical excellence. Whatever designs, whatever solutions that are being built, they need to be able to meet certain technical requirements. They need to be robust, they need to be resilient, they need to be secure. So technical excellence is very important here. Then simplicity is essential. Don't do more than is required. Don't do more than is required. So that's simplicity for you. The art of maximizing the work not done. So only what is necessary is done to produce what adds value to the customer. The 11th one is that you need to work with self-organizing teams. In Agile, there's nothing like micromanaging. The team that is developing the solution is self-organizing. They have all the skills needed. So you can imagine, if you don't have all the skills needed to develop a solution, it becomes difficult to become adaptive. So Agile recommends that the team, whether it is 10 people, 9 people, 7 people, whatever it is, they have all the skills required in coding, in testing, in QA, in deployment, and whatever you can think about. So that is self-organizing teams. Then lastly, but not the least of the 12 principles, is the need to reflect regularly. Why are you reflecting regularly? Look back. At the end of every iteration, you want to go back and see, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What should we stop doing? And as individuals, we need to do this on a regular basis. Am I making progress? Am I not making progress? What is impeding my progress? What challenges do I have? How do I resolve these challenges? So that reflection is very important in Agile. That is how you adapt, make changes, learn, and improve. So these are the 12 principles that add up to the 4 values that we have discussed when it comes to Agile. And you can find all of these on the www.agilemanifesto.org website. You'll find all of these there. So let's look at some popular Agile methodologies. So remember, Agile is not a methodology, but we have Agile methodologies, methodologies that have imbibed the values and the principles of Agile. So we have Scrum. Scrum is the most popular among all the Agile frameworks, methodologies available today. Then we have XP, which is extreme programming. We have DSDM. We have Lean, adaptive software, Crystal, feature-driven as FDD. There is also LESS. There is, in fact, the list is endless, right? For these Agile frameworks that are coming up. Organizations are actually developing their own frameworks. Spotify has its own Agile framework that it works with. IBM and other people have their own stuff that they use. So who knows? You can also come up with your own framework and give it a name. Maybe CoreTech Agile Solution, method, or framework that can be used by other people. It's all based on the foundations that we have discussed earlier, the values and then the principles. So once you understand the values, you can build on the values and the principles to develop your custom-based agile framework or methodology. But if you want to start, maybe you want to go and then look at what exists. Some people actually pick and choose what they see in some of the popular ones and then join them together to form their own approach to developing solutions. So it all depends on the individual and the organization as well. Now, at every stage of the projects, there are some specifics that can be used. For example, during planning, some individuals may be looking at using Scrum, Kanban. Others will be using Agile PM, RUP. There's DSDM, RAD, Crystal, and many others there. During analysis, there are other ones there, user stories, user cases. These are certain practices that you can use during your Agile projects. During the design, UX designs, UML, during the build, there are ways of going about the build. For testing, you have TDD, test-driven development. There's acceptance test-driven development. Automated testing is also there. And there's also a framework for integrated testing, FIT. These are all there that individuals and organizations can actually use to become agile. In the deployment, you have continuous integration, CI/CD pipelines. If you are using Azure, you are using Oracle Cloud, they have DevOps systems in place that can help you to innovate with your solution and your products faster. And during the review, we talked about retrospectives, where you look at what you have done in the past, where there's a need for change, you need to make the changes as well. So these are a few things in Agile that many of the solution developers actually use. A critical question people usually ask is, how do I become agile? How do we become agile? How does an organization become agile? Well, we have already mentioned that agile is not a silver bullet. It doesn't solve all problems, right? So it is not possible that agile will work in every situation. Please, we shouldn't think that agile is a silver bullet. It is not. So some major considerations before we become agile. One, mindset shifts. Senior developers, senior leaders sometimes have a way of thinking. And in our part of the world, where people feel seniority is the way, in Agile, you may be surprised that the developers may have more say than somebody else who may be senior in the organization, right? So that kind of mindset shift that, look, these people are self-organizing. They need not to be micromanaged. It's difficult for many organizations. So if an organization is not able to make that mindset shift of allowing people to be innovative, to be self-organizing, then this may not work. So to be agile, leaders must start making a mindset shift. Change the way they think. Remove seniority and command and control from their system. Okay? So command and control should be out of the way if we want to be agile. We want to allow people to be self-organizing. We want the team to be able to manage their own internal dynamics. That is how to be agile. Then we're looking at foster collaboration with a focus on the customer. To be agile, our key focus should be on the customer. And we want to collaborate. We want to have the customer on our side. We want to have regular communication with the customer. We want to always clarify things with the customer. Sometimes what is written might not be the actual intent. So communicating, clarifying things, discussing matters can make things clearer and easier so that the back and forth can be reduced. So do you have an environment that fosters collaboration, or the environment is a silo-based environment where everybody thinks my department, my unit, not the bigger picture, our organization? So that mindset shift should also be there if we want to be agile. Then we also want to have a vision. You need to have a vision, right? Of course, being a visionary is seeing beyond the obvious. Look at what you intend to achieve and then make sure how to achieve is visualized. You can use boards to map how you want things to be done, how we are going to achieve our vision. And in many organizations, we have whiteboards. You can use sketches to be able to visualize what you want to achieve. So these things can help organizations to be agile. We don't want to keep things in our mind, keep things away from our stakeholders. We want to make sure that everybody understands the vision and they can collaborate. They can also contribute to how we realize that vision. That is what we need to do if we want to be agile. Then provide and seek feedback. Agile thrives on constant feedback because we don't want to wait too long before we get feedback, and then what the customer wants or is asking for, we have not been able to meet. So the shorter the feedback loop, the better. And we shouldn't think that feedback should always come to us. No. We should also be proactive in asking for feedback. When was the last time you asked a friend about your progress as an individual? Do you seek for feedback, or you are waiting for somebody to give you feedback? So being agile requires that we are proactive in seeking feedback as well. So personally, as individuals, we can do that to be agile. Then we are talking about retrospect regularly. Retrospect here means do a review of what has happened in the past. Now, if you do that kind of review, you can learn. You can learn to unlearn bad things. So what failed? The way I dealt with the customer, the way I spoke to the customer did not like it. We can learn from it and make a change so that we make better decisions in the future. So if you don't have an environment where people can actually seek feedback and then give feedback freely, becoming agile will be a bit difficult. If you don't have an environment which allows people to learn, because we can make mistakes, and we make mistakes, we learn from the mistakes. It could be how you handled someone. Today I was in a meeting and the discussions went a bit awry, but at the end of the day, the customer was happy because we listened to the customer. So we learn and then we adapt. Once you learn, you make the necessary changes and move forward. Before applying Agile, certain questions must be asked. Some organizations are saying, we want to go Agile. We want to go Agile. Yes, we have heard about Agile. We want to also be Agile. Why does the team want to be Agile? Why does the team want to use Agile? That's a very important question. Why? You need to find out. Is this something that would benefit the organization? If it will, what are the stepping stones for that agility that we want to adapt? So we need to find out the why. It's very important. Then in the organization, it's not everybody that is a techie. And usually the adopting of Agile begins at the technical side of things for many organizations, technical bits, technical side, IT. That is where they start the agility from. But what about your non-tech people? Can you carry them along? What problems do they have that Agile can solve? You want to find out as well. Then in the organization, you may be regulated, like the banks are regulated. Are there any strict regulations that can influence what can be done and what cannot be done? This is a very important question that organizations need to ask. Because if you want to be innovative, you want to be agile, but then setting lay down policies by government institutions, regulators restrict you, what can you do? So all these considerations should be looked into so that our process of becoming agile will be smooth. Now, why should we think about transitioning to agile if the environment is rife for such? If we have a conducive environment for us to transition into agile, why should we consider doing that? For one thing, agile helps to accelerate time to market. We talked about shorter cycles for delivery. Yes, I have personally worked on software projects for the banks, and we could deliver solutions within 2 weeks for the banks. Yes. And once they do their review and they are fine with it, it goes into production straight. 2 weeks. Yes. So it is possible. You accelerate time to market. We talked about focusing more on collaborating with the customer than looking at contract negotiation and looking at comprehensive documentation, right? So if you have sufficient documentation, you can actually be faster in your delivery than focusing so much like the way the waterfall approach looks like. You want to get everything right before you start. That may delay going to market. The competitors will actually supplant you. Then we have enhanced ability to manage changing priorities. If you are adaptable, when changes occur in the market, you can be able to deal with it. But if you are not, when changes occur in the market, that may make it difficult. Because sometimes you may set out to release a product, but then you realize that your competitor has already released a product. Why go with a product again? Maybe you have to make some changes to make it better than what the competitor has put in the market. If you are adaptable, if you are agile, you can be able to do this. Then increase productivity. We've talked about frequent communication, collaboration, and all that. When you do this, people are happy to work. They are clear on what they are doing. Confusion is reduced. And the morale is boosted. And once morale is boosted, people are ready to work, and then they give much more results, value for the customer. Then to enable you manage outsource agile projects. You see, some of the, in fact, most of these small IT companies, they have become more agile. So if an organization wants to work with them and it's not agile, it will be difficult to manage these vendors, these suppliers, these third parties. So these are just but a few of the benefits that organizations would derive if they have the conducive environment to transition into agile. What are the risks and concerns? Yes, we don't want to think that agile is a silver bullet, like I have already mentioned. And some people misunderstand this agile to be small waterfalls, and then they manage their projects like waterfalls in bits. But the concept should be focused on interactions. We want the customer to be involved. If the business cannot commit to this continuous involvement of the customer, then this agile will not work. We talked about transparency. making things visible. Progress of the project should be visible. I don't need to go and then ask for reports. There should be progress frequently made available for all stakeholders to know where we are in the course of the project. If that cannot be done, then Agile may not work in the environment. That's another challenge. And when you are using Agile, sometimes it is difficult to determine the end game because you are being adaptive. Changes will come, and we are told that we can welcome change even late in the course of the project. So unlike traditional projects where you create a step-by-step approach to get to the end date and fix it, Agile does not look at things that way. There's room for adaptability. Someone may say that's a scope creep. Well, we welcome change, and the change should add value to the customer. The change should be a change that adds value to the customer. So that's the concern people may have. Now, let's just conclude quickly so that we can have more time for questions. So if you look at the SWOTs for Agile, we have pros and cons. Some of the strengths, we've already mentioned them: high visibility, you can work on changes, time to market, control costs, and the rest. If you look at the weaknesses, we need customer commitment, which sometimes may not be there. Constant testing is very important. The regular communication, very important. Now, the strengths lead to opportunities, like team members are motivated, business goals are well understood and they are met. And if you look at the weaknesses leading to certain threats, security of offshore communication, sometimes because there's no collaboration, we don't understand things well, and the quality will suffer because you are producing something that the customer does not really want. You didn't engage. That's a serious threat, right? So these are the pros and cons for Agile. Of course, that's not an exhaustive list. So what have we discussed so far? Agile focuses on key ideas, producing software or solution in an iterative manner. The teams are usually smaller. Okay, they work on smaller projects. Of course, Agile can be used on very large, complex projects as well. Then we have the Agile Manifesto, which we've talked about, with the 4 values and then the 12 principles. We have looked at some popular Agile methods and frameworks. They all have their pros and cons, and therefore, choosing any of them, you need to be aware of their pros and cons. Then we have how Agile projects, we can transition there, and its usage over the waterfall approach we've discussed that also. So these are a few references, and once you get the documents, the slides, you can check on more information on what we have discussed to better understand the Agile concepts or philosophy. So thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity to thank Lillian and thank Cepacor. They have been very instrumental in getting this session run up to this stage. And all the facilitators at CoreTech Agile Limited, I want to say thank you very much for making this happen. Over to you, Lillian, please.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for that insightful session. At this point, we would like to take questions. You could either raise your hand by showing the hand raise button or drop your questions in the chat. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand or drop it in the chat and we'll give you the go ahead. Okay, so there's a question here in the chat box. Baba says, what is best estimation technique for Agile? So he would like to know what is the best estimation technique for agile projects.
Okay, thank you very much, Baba. So there are many of them, and most of them are effort-based, okay, not time-based. Some people think that once you are estimating, you estimate by let's say the amount of hours and things like that. Most agile teams would estimate by effort, and there are a number of techniques for determining the effort involved. So, for example, you can use a t-shirt size. My t-shirt size may be a certain size, and what we will do is that we look at having one to determine the effort that will go into developing, let's say, a particular task. Now, once we know the t-shirt size of that particular task, any other task can be compared to it. So let's say you can have a large, medium, like the way we have the t-shirt sizes, right? Extra large, and then we have small. So based on the effort involved, you can use the t-shirt size. You can also use the time involved, looking at how much time will I take to be able to develop this particular piece of code. It could be 10 hours, but that is usually not what the agile teams will use. And there are some Fibonacci series that can also be used to estimate. But the thing is this: each estimating technique has its pros and cons. So depending on the maturity level of the team, depending on where you are in the progress in the progress of the project, the learning curve of the people involved, you may want to determine one that will be suitable for that particular team. So we will not say that this is the best way to go, but there are several of them. Like I mentioned, the set size estimation. We can have the dots voting technique to estimate, and many others are there. Okay. So let me ask Baba. Baba, you can speak if you want to. I'm going to make it possible for speaking. If you can unmute yourself, which one have you been using, and what has been a challenge, Baba?
Okay. Hello. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yeah. Please. I haven't started practicing. I haven't started using Agile in my field, but I wanted to know what is the estimation technique when you want to cost a project, or when you want to cost a project. I realized that you were focused more on the schedule, but I was talking about estimating cost.
Okay.
What are the other techniques?
Okay, great. Now I get your question clearly. It's good that you were able to speak. So Agile would want to go with what we call target costing. So Baba, we look at target cost. So for example, we are looking at the iteration number 1. What are the requirements? What are we supposed to deliver? We discuss that, and then we look at the effort involved, and then we cost for that particular iteration. Because you don't know what will happen in the future. So if you want to use a fixed price type of costing, you end up either going more than that, or you will not be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So target costing is the best way to estimate the cost of, and it is done per iteration. So look at every iteration, what is involved, and then we can now look at the cost for that particular iteration. So if you can determine all the iterations in advance, then you can then sum them up. But Agile requires the adaptability. So you cannot do all of this in upfront. Okay. Baba, I hope you are good.
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome,
okay, sir. So Michael, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Emmanuel, for that insightful section. I would like to find out something which is very similar to your last comment to Babe's question. My question is, how do we reconcile the strain on resources, i.e. funds for projects, and the trait of agile accepting changes, even at very advanced stages of projects?
Okay, so
Because usually changes comes with associated costs. And looking at the strain on organization resources being funding, how do we reconcile the two? Is it that it becomes limitless or borderless when it comes to funding projects that uses agile approach?
very interesting question. So thank you very much. I will attempt to answer the question based on how I understood it. So it's if I get you right, Michael, you're looking at how you manage the expense on the project, especially when it comes to changes, right? That a change late in the course of the project may or would I would say usually incur some cost. Is that not the question?
Sure.
So how do we look at it, right? Now, a key point that we mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation had to do with collaboration. Because you are collaborating with the customer and it is iterative, you are able to determine the cost of an iteration before you start, because you know the requirements that must be developed, you know the features, the functionality that will be required. And the key thing is that you are adding value. So anything that does not add value will not be considered. And remember, if it is going to add value to the customer, then it's going to be beneficial, the change that is being required. And the collaboration is where we discuss, okay, customer collaboration, we discuss, because if you want a change, the change will not come for free. There should be some implication when it comes to the financial aspects, but that has to be discussed and then agreed upon. I understand that organizations have limited funds. That is true, and they cannot be pumping in every now and then. But think about the other side, where you develop something that does not become valuable to the customer, and it becomes white elephant. Would that not be waste of money? Michael?
Sure, it will.
And therefore, you have to now come up with another project to solve a problem that has been created because that project delivers something that is not useful. So organizations are not looking at it from that angle as well, that look, if we don't make the change now, which is valuable to us, and because we're thinking about the cost, then we'll have to come up with another project to deliver what we are expecting. And that will be additional costs. So why don't we innovate at this point and then do what will be valuable to us, pay for it, and then save ourselves starting another project, which will also require funds. So if organizations look at it from that angle, then it will not be a problem because it is adding value. Remember, we are adding value by making that change. If it's not going to bring any value, then there's no need for making that change. Because the key thing is to satisfy the customer. That's the first principle, satisfy the customer. So anything that does not add value, no way. If it adds value, yes, let's go on with it. So Michael, I don't know if you're getting the point.
Sure, I do. In fact, I would like to just add that, just to add to what you just said, that I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of organizations, especially the financial institutions, have a lot of products that are not being used. They are on their shelves and they are in their archives gathering dust because they were looking more at the cost side of it not considering the value that the customer will derive from that product or that project when it is done. And so when the project manager or the Scrum Master or whoever is leading the project is bringing the cost component of whatever request, change request that they are making, then they say, okay, Charlie, if that's the case, let's keep the product like that and let's go to market. And at the end of the day, the final beneficiary do not get the value that they are supposed to get. And so they discontinue using the product. So that's a letter I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this from practical experience, right? Very, very good. Lillian, please.
Okay, we have another hand up. Adam, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Lillian. Is my audio okay? Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you have really done what you're good at, teaching us the basics about Agile. I will just comment. I'll have two things to say really. So the first will be to comment on what Michael just spoke about the idea that in some cases organizations or people are not able to understand value in its entirety. And it's true, because in most cases when we talk about value, we only associate value with the cost component, the financial component. But value can also be, let's say, defined in a broader sense, where we actually talk about the outcomes and benefits for actually doing the work, or let's say doing something. So if you are able to really define value, capturing what value is in its entirety, not just the financial aspect of value, but clearly being able to, let's say, define what the business gains out of doing this, and this is clearly understood and shared among, let's say, the stakeholders, then you can really maybe have some positive, let's say, support from the people you work with. I think this is just what I want to say regarding Michael's earlier comments. I don't know if, Michael, you have anything to say on that as well before I also talk about my second question. Just to understand if what I'm saying makes sense to you or not.
I think it does, because like you rightly said, costs or value is not only the cost component of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It has benefits. Okay, so while the organization may be looking at costs as value, the final beneficiary, which is the client, which is the customer who will be using the product, will be looking at the benefit he's going to derive from that product. So yes, you will be looking at costs as value, and then the client will also be looking at the benefits he's going to derive. And so those two must be balanced well, so that the organization will not be fixated on cost.
Yes,
should be looking
exactly.
at end game. What am I giving to the client? Am I going to satisfy his needs? So I think you are right.
Thank you. So that's also from the experience I've had working with customers and also doing a bit of technical sales, and where you always have to communicate what the value is for, let's say, a product or a solution you are positioning to a customer, right? You don't just talk about the cost, but you really try to understand the outcomes. And these days, I think you hear a lot about outcomes, right? And not just outputs, because outcomes are supposed to help you capture value in its entirety. And so this then goes on to my second question, not really a question per se, but just to comment on your slide on how to be agile. Yeah. So maybe if you want to share it, because I just noted something there as well. So the line which says, define your vision and visualize the process. And I think this also speaks to what I just spoke about, right? So it's not really a question, but just to add to what you said, that this is really about defining the outcome. So the vision is the outcome, what you want out of the project, and then being able to visualize the process. So being able to really get this step right is also very key to understand the value component of the project, right? Because the vision is what you intend to get out of the project. And then also being able to visualize the process of delivering this value. So I've sort of also done some study in this area, and there are some organizations that talk about using what they call outcomes path dependency. That helps you visualize the path forward to delivering the value. So then just a comment just to add on your slide. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
We would like to take one final question. Any other question? You can type in the chat box if you are unable to speak now. Okay, all right, if there are no other questions. Okay, there's someone beside me now who wants to ask a question. I'll give him the opportunity to speak through my microphone. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Lillian, for the opportunity. So my question is this. I don't know, the facilitator I know has been in the industry for a while. Possibly knows how most of the organizations in Ghana who are involved in project management are struggling to bring Agile on board, especially because we are neck deep in this waterfall methodologies. Is there a way he's tried to evaluate the barriers that is impacting organizations in fully deploying Agile in most of their projects that would have done better on Agile? And what techniques he possibly prefers to us who are studying to become ambassadors, or sort of try and use these techniques to overcome these barriers. Because I know there are a lot of projects out there that if you have run Agile would have been more beneficial, would have been completed, or would have been more successful in being completed than using the more or less functional method that's waterfall that all of us have been known to over the period. If you have some perspective on that, I'll be happy if you could share so we can learn from it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, can I know the name, please, so that I can address?
Bernard.
Okay, Engineer Bernard. Thank you very much for the question. So, truly, I've worked with a number of industries. I've worked with GPHA on some projects and things like that. So when it comes to governments, when it comes to the banking sector and some other places, I have had the opportunity to do some projects in there. Now, what I have personally realized over the years is the fact that the command and control is still something that people are not able to let go. And partly because from my perspective, people are not trustworthy. People pretend to be working, and they're not really delivering results or the value that the organization requires. Therefore, the leaders are left with nothing but to enforce control so that people are brought to book and they do what is expected of them. So with this kind of, where I am not trustworthy and I don't trust you, being innovative becomes a bit tough, right? So it should be both sides, where people who are working, like you and myself, who are working, need to be disciplined enough to have work ethics that make us trustworthy, to be given the leeway to be able to work within our space because they know that we are going to deliver value. That's a very key issue that we have in our part of the world. I don't know if Bernard, if you get me what I'm talking about, that work ethics for people who are working is a barrier because we are not trustworthy. You give somebody a task to do, and the person is in town doing his own business, right? And the task gets undone. What would you do? Engineer?
Yeah, Chief, I get your drift.
That is a very key barrier. I don't trust you, you don't trust me. And Agile hardly works with no trust. And the trust should be earned. And that's why it mentions building software around motivated people. So somebody should be motivated intrinsically that I want to deliver this. I'm doing something that is going to benefit a customer. It's going to bring something valuable, and people are going to be excited about it. So I'm personally excited to do this because of the benefit it's going to bring to people. That is not there. So motivation low. And because the system is a bit hard, people think that money would motivate people, and that is not working, because if you give me X amount today, then my needs and my wants increase. So I want extra. So then money does not become a good motivating factor for me. So what then can motivate me? Are we able to determine what motivates people apart from money? If we are able to, I mean, I work with people who are motivated not with money, not with money. So can we find what else motivates people than just money, and be able to use that to motivate them so that they can do all the things that we are talking about here? Are organizations making room for people to make mistakes? So Bernard, your organization, if somebody blows a transformer, what happens to the person? Maybe the person is spared, right? Or is given some chastisement and that. But in other organizations, that's not the case. You dare make a mistake. You dare make a mistake. So if you dare make a mistake, how will you be innovative? Will you even think out of the box? No, you will do what is the status quo. This is what I'm told to do. I do it. Whether it works, it doesn't work, I don't care. All I care about is at the end of the month, I have my salary. I'm going. Bernard, is that not the case? Hello, engineer.
Yeah, actually, I think in my organization, that's not the case, actually.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just bringing some facts from where other places have worked, okay? But if you put your ears on the ground, what do you think? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I believe every organization must have policies, procedures, guidelines in place, ethics. That staff are supposed to follow in line with the organizational culture. So yes, I agree. The only aspects in our kind of environment, especially here in most of the government institutions who have the money to do this big project that could have been successful if we had applied agile methodology, is that the like you said, the command and control is entrenched. So you have a boss who feels a bit threatened when you try to bring ideas that will make work more efficient, because it's like, you know, that kind of culture is well entrenched. So it will take time for us to perhaps try and wade through those muddy waters, which in some organizations people will not even dare question a supervisor, or dare make a remark about something they think the supervisor is not doing well, because it's I mean, in a human work environment you don't do that, you know. So we've been trained like that, so it will take time for us to build that kind of rigidity in our behaviors in terms of how we want to be trusted in our work environments. It has always been the carrot and stick, I mean, strategy for most of these government institutions, but that's why we are being trained. That's why we are being certified as project management professionals. So we should go all out there and then try and make that difference, so that, I mean, the hard work will pay off. Yeah,
exactly. I have a personal experience where I challenged a CTO about some years ago, and up to now, this man is one of my best friends. I challenge him. And some of us are afraid to challenge people. We should be able to, if something will not work, we should let the people know that it will not work and to give reasons. We shouldn't just go and then, without any tact, just talk anyhow. But then you should provide facts that indicate why this will not work. And then once you are able to get somebody who is a bit level-headed, possibly he will understand, he will see the sense in what you are making, what you are saying, and possibly accept it. So we shouldn't be afraid to make that change. Of course, the culture, like you mentioned, opening the onyeboni, that kind of thing that we have, you know, we need to make a mindset shift. The mindset should shift from that kind of thinking. Okay, Lillian, back to you. Thank you very much, engineer.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. And on that note, we'll bring the session to a close shortly. We would be sharing the recording and the slides with all participants. Again, thank you for joining. We would like to know where you're joining from. So if you could spare a few minutes to write in the chat box, if you're joining from here in Accra or from London or wherever you are, kindly let us know. We offer a number of trainings, so I'll be sharing my screen. We have some upcoming trainings and we would like to share with you. If you are interested, kindly register to join our session. So the first training we have is becoming an Agile certified practitioner. And this training commences in September, this very month, 30th of September, and it's going to take place only on Saturdays. The training cost is 1,500 cedis. If you also want to add on the exam prep, that would cost you an extra 1,000 cedis. So I have taken this class. I'm also a certified Agile practitioner, so I recommend it to all of you. Again, we have another training coming up, PMP training and exam prep. This session will commence in October and is going to take place virtually only on Saturdays. We also have the exam prep session as well. That goes for 1,300 cedis. To register, you can kindly call the number on here or message any of us. We would gladly respond and give you all the necessary information concerning the training. Once again, thank you all so much for joining. We will be organizing more free webinars and we hope that you spread the word and come and learn a thing more to improve yourself as practitioners, BMP practitioners or Agile practitioners. Thank you once again to our facilitator, Mr. Amankwano, and we would like to call it a night. Bye for now.